This is a nine-tailed fox who has practiced for thousands of years. His name is Li Ran. He was originally a nine-tailed fox who guarded the sacred mountain. He lived a carefree life. But one day a little girl appeared and changed his life. Her name was Yun Su. Her appearance was like a ray of light into Li Ran's lonely life. They soon became friends. Yun Su loved archery, so Li Ran used an apple as a target for her to practice on. Soon 20 years passed. Yun Su grew up. They became a couple. One day, Li Ran was curious and asked her why she loved archery so much. But then Yun Su told him she wanted to kill her father. It turns out that her father is the king of this country. But since she was a child, she's had psychic powers for a long time and realized that something was wrong with him. Since she was 5 years old, her father's body has been possessed by a dragon. She practiced archery to kill the dragon, but when the dragon died, her father died too. That's why Yun Su couldn't do it. Finally, she made a deal with the dragon. She let her father go, and she sacrificed her body to the dragon. But she didn't realize that Li Ran's body was the final target of the dragon. Yun Su, in order to protect Li Ran, used her last ounce of consciousness to make Li Ran kill herself. Li Ran, who had never cried before, cried her tears that night. When the messenger of the underworld, Du Yi Po, was about to leave with Yun Su's soul, Li Ran, who couldn't let Yun Su go, ran after him. Then he used his divine power to freeze all the rivers on the way to hell. He then begged Du Yi Po to give him one last moment to say goodbye. Du Yi Po was touched by his persistence, so he gave him the chance to say goodbye to Yun Su and Li Ran. After murmuring a few words, Li Ran sent his fox pearl into Yun Su's body. He hoped to find Yun Su in his next life with the pearl, but the world is so big. Li Ran searched for several lifetimes without any result, so he signed a contract of sale with Du Yi Po. He will do it for her to get rid of the evil demons on earth, and she blessed Yun Su's reincarnation in every life. Li Ran lives an extremely disciplined life. Every morning, she wakes up regularly, then she takes a bath, then she takes out a box of ice cream from the freezer for breakfast. Then she takes the time to eat. I take a look at the itinerary on the table. Today was a special day, so he sprayed himself with perfume. Then he chose a red umbrella, and he went straight to the hotel in the pouring rain with a graceful stride. Outside the door, the guests were complaining. Why is it suddenly raining on a sunny day? And after he put away the umbrella, he said today is the day the fox gets married. Then Li Ran went straight into the bride's dressing room. The bride realized something when she saw him. She hurriedly sent her friends out. It turns out that the woman is a fox demon, wanted for causing trouble in the world, and Li Ran's arrival means she's about to go on trial. She begged for forgiveness and said she had changed her habit of harming people, but Li Ran didn't want to let her go, so she showed her true colors. But how can this little trick hurt Li Ran? He dodged the attack. He put his sword on her neck, but before he could do it, the hotel waiter suddenly came over. The two of them had to put away their weapons first. Li Ran wanted to wait until after the wedding to take her life, but the fox demon ran to the lobby to ask for help. Li Ran just closed the door, and then turned off the security cameras. The groomsmen tried to take action against him, but they were all taken care of in no time. Then he stopped the groom who wanted to escape with the fox demon. Soon the groom was also killed. The fox demon also pounced on him, but she was subdued in no time. She looked at the groom on the ground. The umbrella in Li Ran's hand transformed into a sword and stabbed the fox demon. The fox demon shed tears. Then her pupils dilated and she transformed into her real body and disappeared. Li Ran came to the groom. The pupils of his eyes emitted golden light and erased all the memories of the groom and the fox demon. After all this, Li Ran went to the Netherworld Bureau. He tore down the picture of the fox demon from the notice board. Then he went to the Du Yi Po, who was in charge of reincarnation, and slammed the portrait on the table. He asked her when she could finish her task. Du Yi Po was instantly enraged. She took out the contract that Li Ran had signed. He then read out the contents of the contract to him. Li Ran was convinced. After cursing at Du Yi Po, he turned around and left. That night, a bus came by. Ji-yo just wanted to get on. The man beside her suddenly fell to the ground. She rushed to help him. He gave her a long look. The driver tried to urge her to get on the bus, but he held onto her legs and wouldn't let her go. The driver was impatient and drove away. Ji-yo had no choice but to carry him on her back and take him home. But the more she walked, the more she felt something was wrong. He was not only heavy but also cold. It was as if she was carrying a cold stone on her back. Just when she felt like she couldn't breathe, he suddenly jumped off her body. Ji-yo tried to persuade him to stop drinking. He said he didn't owe her anything anymore. When she was surprised, suddenly a cab came by. Ji-yo stopped the cab and tried to get in, but when she tried to turn around, she realized that he had disappeared. She asked the driver if he'd seen him go, but the driver told her she was the only one here. Ji-yo felt a chill down her back. She got into the car. Soon the car entered the Fox Ridge Tunnel. Ji-yo was surprised to find that the bus she had just been riding on had been in an accident. She turned her head to look at the road behind her. Suddenly her breath caught in her throat. 20 years ago, she and her parents were in an accident because they were passing through here, although she was lucky to survive. But her parents disappeared and have never been found. She ran onto the bus to look for clues, but she found that all the passengers on the bus had been killed. Only one schoolgirl was still breathing. She suddenly opened her eyes. Ji-yo was shocked. Soon the police arrived at the scene. After counting the passengers, all 6 people in the car were killed, except the girl student. But then Ji-yo told the police that one person was missing. She had seen 7 people on the bus before she got on. She recalled that the missing man had red hair and a red umbrella. It's the same same man she bumped into at the bridal shower she attended earlier. As a reporter, she also found a handful of fox fur at the wedding. She felt something strange was going on. The next day, she asked someone to retrieve the hotel's CCTV. After looking at Lee Ran in the video, she was sure he was the man who disappeared from the bus last night. She went to the hospital and found the surviving girl. She took Lee Ran's photo and asked her if she'd seen him before. The girl was so scared that she was hyperventilating. She kept screaming that he was trying to kill her. For the girl's safety, Ji-yo took her to her home. She asked her what happened on the bus. She said that as soon as the bus entered the tunnel, the lights suddenly went out. Then the man turned into a fox and killed everyone on the bus. But Ji-yo sensed something was wrong. He pretended to calm her down. Then she knocked over a glass of water on the table. While she was cleaning up, she took a piece of glass and aimed it at the girl's neck. At that moment, the girl suddenly laughed. It turned out that Ji-yo had already sensed something strange. All the people in the car were in an accident, but the only survivor didn't have a scratch on her. She never believed in miracles. Seeing that she couldn't hide it, the girl revealed herself as a man. Then he slowly approached Ji-yo. When she saw what was happening, she pushed the glass into his body, but the man didn't react at all. He just pulled the glass out of his body. Then he tried to attack Ji-yo. Suddenly, an unknown object flew in through the window. Lee Ran came in with a note from Ji-yo, but before they could say anything, the man suddenly yelled at Lee Ran. Lee Ran tried to fight back. The man got angry and started fighting. Ji-yo realized from their conversation that the man was Lee Ran's brother, Lee Lang, but because of some grudges, they became enemies. They fought from inside the house to outside. Seeing that he was no match for Lee Ran, so he told Lee Ran to protect Ji-yo, otherwise he would come and marry her sooner or later. Then he got up and left. As soon as Ji-yo wanted to go up to Lee Ran and ask him a question, Lee Ran suddenly cast a spell to erase Ji-yo's memories, but she didn't realize that it wouldn't work on Ji-yo at all, because from the very beginning, she had hidden a camera in her house to record everything that happened last night. The next night, she invited Lee Ran to her home. Then she put the video on the TV. Lee Ran asked her what she wanted, but then Ji-yo suddenly jumped onto the balcony. She jumped off the balcony. Lee Ran took a look. Seeing that Ji-yo was so desperate, he sighed helplessly, and Ji-yo closed his eyes. But the next moment, Lee Ran appeared and hugged her. Then they slowly landed on the ground. Lee Ran admitted her identity as the nine-tailed fox. At that moment, Ji-yo took out an anesthetic needle and injected it into his neck. When Lee Ran woke up the next morning and found Ji-yo sipping tea, angry, he went up to him and told him that she had seen something she shouldn't have seen, so he had to remove her eyes. But Ji-yo wasn't scared at all. She told Lee Ran what had happened to her and her parents at Foxley Ridge more than 20 years ago. Then she asked him to help her find her parents. Lee Ran wanted to refuse, but she took out a flash drive. Then she threatened Lee Ran that if he didn't help her, she would publicize the fact that he was a nine-tailed fox. But Lee Ran didn't care about it. She went forward and blocked Ji-yo's eyes with her hand. Then she cast a spell on Ji-yo and blinded her left eye. Then he told her that only those with power can threaten others. Just as Lee Ran was about to do something to her right eye, Ji-yo suddenly grabbed the flash drive in his hand and threw it into the water. Lee Ran gave her a surprised look, and Ji-yo got up and told him that since she was a child, she had heard that foxes always return favors, so she wanted to try to destroy the flash drive to see if the rumor is true. Lee Ran laughed helplessly at this, because repaying favors is indeed the ancestral motto of the nine-tailed fox clan. The next day he found Du-Yi-Po. After a bit of prying, he found out that Ji-yo's parents didn't appear in the King's Book of the Dead, but Du-Yi-Po didn't know her parents' whereabouts either. After telling Ji-yo about this, Lee Ran asked her not to meet him again. It would be dangerous for her to get involved in her own world. Ji-yo didn't like it, but she agreed. When she got home at night, she watched a video of herself and her parents as children, thinking that they were still alive. Ji-yo felt a strange feeling in her heart, but just as she was about to turn off the TV, the picture on the TV suddenly stopped. In the screen, her mom threw herself out of the TV with a ball in her arms. Ji-yo was surprised, so she went to pick it up, but it was a skull. She was shocked. She woke up and realized it was a dream. But the next morning, the news broke that 3 fishermen found a skull while fishing. The skull looked exactly like the one in Ji-yo's dream. It turned out that the fishermen had found a skull while fishing. The men didn't know what to do. Then an old crew member rushed to cover his mouth, told him not to speak out of turn, otherwise, the ghosts will be attracted to the boat. The captain poured a glass of wine next to the skull. Then he took off his hat and tried to calm the owner of the skull. But no sooner had he done so than he realized something was wrong. The dentures on the skull were identical to those of his shipmates, who had been killed a few months earlier. Soon after, the marine police arrived and took the skull away. The daughter of the deceased was devastated, so she got a witch to perform a ritual for her father on the beach. She wanted the Dragon King to return her father's body, but the witch suddenly stopped while she was dancing. Then her body began to convulse. The witch was horrified and said, "Your father's body has been returned and is on the island." And from that night on, the village was plagued by strange occurrences. First, the fisherman who found the skull. He drank a lot of water, but he was thirsty. He went to the bathroom to drink, but the water suddenly stopped, and a handful of hair came out. He turned on the other faucet and found that the water had also stopped. So he was so thirsty that he shoved his head into the toilet. Something seemed to pull him back. It didn't take long. He drowned in the toilet. Another fisherman who found a skull. He always felt that there were ghosts in his house, so he had to live in a tent. But then a dark shadow appeared outside the tent. He climbed out of the tent and saw that no one was there. But when he looked back, he suddenly found a headless body standing behind him. And the last fisherman was always hungry. All he can do is keep eating. That's when Ji-yo, the interviewer, brought Li Ran to the island. Ji-yo wanted to ask the villagers about the crime, but when they saw her, they ran away like ghosts. Li Ran took Ji-yo to a forest, because he used to be the god of this mountain, so he summoned the spirit of a tree from the mountain. The tree spirit told Li Ran that since the end of the island war 50 years ago, all the gods on this island have left, so now the island is full of unclean things. Then he guided them to a place. This is the home of the surviving fisherman. When the man heard something outside, he grabbed a knife. Li Ran walked in and sat down. The man tried to drive him away with the knife, but Li Ran overpowered him. He asked the man what the truth was, but the man suddenly went crazy. Suddenly his voice seemed to be caught in something. He died in front of them. Ji-yo went forward and turned over the man's palm. They found a handful of strange hair in his hand. They felt something strange was going on. They went to another fisherman's house, but the man was already dead. Li Ran turned over his hand again. Inside was also a strange hair. Things got stranger and stranger. They went to the last fisherman's house, but there was no one there. At that moment, Ji-yo suddenly realized that the portrait of the Dragon King on the wall was very strange. After comparing it with her cell phone, she realized that the statue of the Dragon King, which was supposed to bless peace, didn't have a dragon's claw. In order to find out what happened, Ji-yo called a colleague. She asked him to find out if there were any special customs on this island. The colleague looked up the information and found out that there was an unsolved case every few years on this island. Ji-yo counted the number of cases every year. They all have one thing in common. They all occurred on the 15th of July every year. At that moment, the only survivor came out in a frenzy. Ji-yo tried to ask him what happened, but the man ran away. Ji-yo ran after him. The man fell to the ground. Ji-yo tried to help him, but he hit him with a hammer. When the man was about to commit further murder, Li Ran stepped in to stop him. The man tried to continue, but Li Ran overpowered him. He then grabbed the hammer. Just as he was about to strike the man, Ji-yo stopped him from behind. The man took the opportunity to run away. While Li Ran was treating Ji-yo's wounds, Li Ran had just put the herbs on her body. Ji-yo suddenly said, "It's hot." Li Ran thought she was joking, but then a dragon scale pattern suddenly appeared on her body. When Li Ran was surprised, Ji-yo suddenly grabbed him by the neck. Li Ran was a bit surprised at first, but when he thought of the portrait he had just seen, he suddenly realized that the people on this island were probably worshipping the Dragon that he killed when he avenged Ji-yo's death. But just as he was thinking of how to awaken Ji-yo, Ji-yo suddenly returned to normal, and the dragon tattoo disappeared. Li Ran sensed something. He grabbed a stone from the ground and threw it. It was his brother Li Lang again. He grabbed Ji-yo and tried to leave. Li Lang threw a handful of stones. Li Ran rushed forward to protect Ji-yo with his clothes. Li Lang rushed towards Ji-yo. Li Ran stopped him and shouted at him to run away. He fought with Li Lang, but a brother is a brother. It wasn't long before Li Lang was defeated, and called for a timeout. Then he told Li Ran everything. It turns out that the death of the victim was indeed the work of the crew. A few months ago, they had an accident and were stranded on the boat for more than half a month, because there was no food. So the 3 crew members beat the victim to death. Li Lang and the witch wanted to revive the dragons on the island. They lacked a maiden to sacrifice, so he found the dead woman's daughter and made a deal with her. He helped the daughter avenge the death of the crew by killing them with evil magic. In return, she helped Li Lang make a sacrifice to bring the dragon back to life. But now Ji-yo is here, so Li Lang has changed his mind. He's had the sorceress charm Ji-yo at the entrance to the village, and he's prepared an evening primrose powder for foxes to sprinkle near the dry well where he's going to revive the dragons. The powder will block the 9-tailed fox's spells and block their sense of smell. Li Ran searched the forest and couldn't find Ji-yo, so he mobilized his divine sense. He wanted to find a guide in the mountain with the face of the former mountain god, but after searching around, no one paid any attention to him. When he was frustrated, suddenly a firefly flew out of the forest. Li Ran was guided by the firefly to the dry well, but because of the boundary of the evening primrose, Li Ran could only be stopped outside. He watched as the witch pushed Ji-yo into the well. The image of Yunsu's death came back to Li Ran's mind. He won't allow what happened back then to happen again. In an instant, 9-tailed fox's anger was completely ignited. It rained heavily from the sky. The boundary was broken. Li Ran angrily walked in. The witch tried to attack him. He summoned heavenly thunder to kill the witch. Then he pulled Ji-yo out of the well and bandaged her hand. He carried her home, but it didn't end there, because Ji-yo's blood had been washed into the well by the rain. While the two of them were drinking and chatting comfortably in the house, the islanders were summoned to the well by some force. Just after dawn, the sound of a baby's steps suddenly rang out from the sea. Li Lang delivered a baby covered with charms into a man's arms. On this day, Ji Yu was leaving a funeral. Suddenly the lights in the funeral parlor slowly dimmed. She thought it was a blackout, so she tried to leave in a hurry. A small black ball suddenly fell from the floor. Ji Yu leaned over and picked it up and realized it was a shriveled cherry. Suddenly two little girls appeared in front of her. Seeing that they couldn't find their father, Ji Yu offered to take them to look for him, but as soon as the two girls came forward, she realized that their shoes were on backwards. Suddenly, someone behind her called out her name. It turned out to be a co-worker. He told Ji Yu he was scared and wanted to go with her. Ji Yu just agreed, but when she turned her head, she suddenly realized that the two little girls had disappeared. The co-worker told her that their parents had probably picked them up. Ji Yu didn't think much of it and left with her co-workers. She didn't even realize that there was a picture of the two little girls hanging in the room next to her. After leaving the house, he and his colleagues separated. Ji Yu suddenly realized that his amulet was broken. Li Ran gave it to him a few days ago. He told her he had to leave Seoul for a few days. He told her to keep the amulet with her, otherwise, she'll be targeted by something unholy. At that moment, Ji Yu felt a chill down her back. She turned her head and saw that no one was behind her, but just when she wanted to leave, suddenly someone pulled her scarf from behind. She turned her head with difficulty. She realized that the two little girls had appeared in front of her again. Soon Ji Yu was strangled to the ground and fainted. When she woke up again, she was rescued by her colleagues. She felt cold all over, so the colleague put a blanket on her. They asked her what happened. Ji Yu described what happened to her co-worker. The co-worker immediately said she had run into a ghost, because ghosts act differently when they're dressed as humans. Then he brought a book from the side. He told Ji Yu that he had just checked. That funeral parlor used to be a children's cemetery, but Ji Yu asked his co-worker why he was holding the book upside down. The co-worker's face turned dark. The lights in the room began to flicker. Two little girls suddenly came out from under the sofa. Ji Yu was so scared that he jumped up. At that moment, there was no movement in the room. Even her co-worker had disappeared. She ran out of the room, but then the two girls came after her. Ji Yu ran into a hallway. Then she locked the door. She hid in a corner and covered her mouth to keep quiet. Then the little girl outside the door came after her. Ji Yu covered her head, and now there were more and more little hands tapping on the door. At that moment, Li Ran, who was serving his sentence in Snowy Mountain Prison, suddenly got a feeling. He knew that Ji Yu was in danger. It turns out that Li Ran didn't leave Seoul for some reason, but because he killed the witch with a thunderbolt a few days ago on the island. So the god of heaven sent Du Yi Po to arrest Li Ran for killing human beings. He told Du Yi Po to put Li Ran in Seolson prison to be punished. And the time in hell is different from Earth. 7 days on Earth and 7 years in hell. So Li Ran had to endure 7 years of torture before he could be released. Sensing that Ji Yu was in danger, he desperately called out Du Yi Po, telling her he has to get out of here. Du Yi Po told him that this was God's punishment, but Li Ran told her he was going to the Mountain of Swords, because if he can get through it, he'll get out early. But Du Yi Po said it was impossible for him to pass through with his mortal body. If he insisted, he'd only die in there. But Li Ran gritted his teeth and said he didn't care. Du Yi Po saw that he was determined to go, so they took him to the Hell Bridge. As soon as Li Ran stepped in, a lot of flying daggers came at him. Even though he tried his best to dodge, he got cuts all over his body. But Ji Yu had already run up to the roof. She thought she was safe and was just about to catch her breath. But then there was a commotion behind her. All the kids swarmed in front of Ji Yu. They pushed her off the roof. Just in the nick of time, Li Ran suddenly appeared. He passed the test of the Mountain of Swords in hell. He saved Ji Yu at the last minute. Ji Yu looked up and saw Li Ran in front of her, bruised and battered. She rushed forward and hugged Li Ran into her arms. Seeing him save her every time despite the danger, she couldn't stop the tears from flowing from her eyes. At that moment, a tear dripped onto Li Ran. Suddenly a light appeared in front of them. The fox pearl Li Ran gave to Yoon Su 1,000 years ago suddenly reacted. Although Ji Yu's tears awakened the fox pearl inside him, but the Drake Dragon that possessed him and killed him has been reincarnated into this world. Li Ran was still unaware of this. The next morning, Li Ran woke up and saw Ji Yu lying on his bedside. At that moment, the butler's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Li Ran tried to tell him to shut up, but Ji Yu was still woken up. Looking at the director of the pet hospital in front of her, she was shocked. And when the butler saw that Li Ran finally got his wife back, he went up and gave Li Ran a hug. Then he introduced himself to Ji Yu. In the evening, Ji Yu and Li Ran went to the beach for a drink and a chat. Li Ran suddenly asked Ji Yu about his wishes. Ji Yu said a lot of things that didn't matter. Then he told him that his biggest regret was that he couldn't find his parents. So the next day, Li Ran approached Du Yi Po. He wanted her to use her clairvoyance to find out about Ji Yu's parents. But Du Yi Po told him that he had already checked last time when he came to ask him. They were neither in the underworld nor in the realm of the living, and their names are not in the book of life and death. She told Li Ran that if he wanted to find them, the only way was to find the person who took them. Li Ran thought for a while. Then she went to find Grandpa Changsheng, the landlord of Fox Hill. He asked him if he knew the whereabouts of the two people in the photo. At first, he didn't want to cooperate, but after a series of screams, Grandpa Changsheng told Li Ran to find someone. Ji Yu took Li Ran to a master for a fortune-telling session. The guru enthusiastically introduced them to the various items on the wall, but Li Ran said he was a liar. The guru immediately changed his face. Ji Yu told him not to talk nonsense. Then she put a banknote into the bowl. She told him she wanted to tell her past lives. The master took out a cell phone and scanned their faces. After hearing Li Ran's question, the master hurriedly put away the phone in embarrassment. He then told them that he already had the answer. He told Ji Yu that she was a princess in her past life. Li Ran was shocked by this. The master looked at Li Ran again. Then he told him that he was a eunuch in his past life. He was killed for serving the wrong food to the emperor. Angrily, Li Ran wanted to leave with Ji Yo, but then the master suddenly stopped them. He told them to separate, otherwise one of them would die because of the other. After leaving the house, Li Ran was angry. Ji Yo went to comfort him. He said fortune telling is just for fun. He told him not to worry about it. Then they went to the magistrate's office, where they were going to find out the news. Shidao here is the mountain god of the Fox Ridge. Li Ran and he are old friends, because the land god told him. Shidao was on night duty the night of the accident, so Li Ran immediately took out a photo of Ji Ya's parents and asked him if he'd seen them before. Shidao thought about it for a while. He told them a man in a blue suit had found him that day, and predicted the accident, and that person was a human being. Because it's been so long, I've already forgotten the person's face. All he could remember was that he had a brand on his forehead. The word, Zijing, was written on it. That kind of mark was only given to people who had committed crimes in those days, so this person has been alive for at least 500 years. Before leaving, Shidao called Li Ran aside. He told Li Ran to separate from Ji Yo, otherwise, one of them will definitely be in danger, and he had just sensed Ji Ya's strong Dragon aura. On the other hand, Li Lang went to the fortune-telling store. The master just wanted to introduce the program. Li Lang revealed his identity. Then he offered to buy the glasses that can see past lives. The master didn't play dumb. He took the glasses out of the package. Li Lang wanted to take them away, but the master told him he had to charge for it. Li Lang took out a whole box of banknotes from behind his back, but the guru told him that he only accepts money of equal value. He asked Li Lang to give him the most precious thing he had in exchange. Li Lang pondered for a while. Then he called Li Ran. He told his brother that he had something to do. Li Ran knew his brother was up to no good, but he agreed. Ji Yo asked him why he wanted to go. Li Ran went to a bookstore and borrowed a brush. He dipped it in water. He wrote the word, visit, on the shoe, and chanted an incantation to hide the writing. He told Ji Yo to stay close to Li Lang no matter what happens, because he will lead them to the culprit. Then they went to the fortune teller's store with Ji Yo. They hid Li Lang's shoes. When they entered, he asked Li Lang what he wanted. Then the fortune teller came in. Li Ran was furious when he saw him. She came up to him and tried to pull off his fake mustache, but Li Lang said he had business to attend to. He asked the fortune teller to appraise him. The master took out a magnifying glass and shook it at Li Ran. He confirmed that Li Ran was Li Lang's most precious possession. When Li Ran was surprised, the master gave the glasses to Li Lang. Li Lang took the glasses and wanted to leave, but just as he stepped out, he realized that his shoes were gone. He was so angry that he cursed twice. He put on the shoes on which Li Ran had just drawn the spell. Li Ran wanted to chase after him with Ji Yo, but the master stopped him. He told him that Li Lang had sold him to him. Before Li Ran could react, the master used his walking stick to turn him into a ball of black gas and put him into a cloth bag. As Li Lang was about to leave, Ji Yo wanted to follow him, but the fortune teller said he was leaving tomorrow. Ji Yo didn't know what to do. After some hesitation, she asked the master how she could let Li Ran go. The master told her to give her most precious thing in exchange. Ji Yo rushed back to her home and took out all her most precious things. Then she gave the master her last gift from her parents, but the master looked at it with a magnifying glass and told her it wasn't her most precious thing at all. Then he used the magnifying glass to look into Ji Yu's eyes. He felt like he saw something, so he hurriedly asked Ji Yu to give him her hand. He told Ji Yu that the most precious thing in her body was the fox pearl, but Ji Yu didn't know what the fox pearl was, so she agreed to the deal. On the way back, Li Ran was furious when he realized that Ji Yu had sold the fox pearl, but Ji Yu was so stupid that she thought she had gotten a great deal. At that moment, she didn't know what the fox pearls meant. At night, when she was going to sleep, Ji Yu suddenly had a nightmare. She dreamt that she was taken to a room full of spells, and there was a strange little boy standing in front of her. The boy turned around and greeted her. Ji Yu suddenly woke up from the dream. It didn't take long. The Dragon scales on her neck suddenly reappeared. Without the fox pearl to hide her scent, she was once again targeted by the dragon. On the other side, a boy accidentally found a pair of glasses that could see his past life. He glanced at his sister in front of him. This sister was a palace maid in her previous life. He looked at his brother next to him. This brother was a eunuch in his past life. The boy then looked at Ji Yo in front of him. Seeing that he didn't look right, he asked him what had happened, but then the boy said, "Your face is terrible." Then he ran away, but not long after that, Li Lang caught the boy and picked him up. It turns out that he lost the glasses last night after drinking too much, and the boy found them in the bushes. Li Lang grabbed the glasses back. Then he took a look at the boy, but the boy's past life was a small black dog. Li Lang's face turned pale when he saw this. A painful memory resurfaced in his mind. Li Lang used to live in the mountains with his brother, Li Ran, but his brother fell in love with a human girl. After giving him a little black dog, he left home forever. It wasn't long before the humans set fire to the mountains. Their happy home was destroyed overnight. Even the dog he left for himself was burned to death. From that day on, Li Lang planted the seed of hatred in his heart. When he grew up, He wanted to take revenge on humans. He spent his days killing people in the village down the mountain. Everywhere he went, there were corpses everywhere. But on that day, his brother Li Ran suddenly came back. Seeing his innocent brother turn into a bloodthirsty demon, Li Ran's heart ached with grief. But the younger brother didn't even notice his brother's strange feelings. He went up to his brother and hugged him. He kept telling him how much he missed him. Li Lang told his brother to take him with him, but he was ordered by the gods to kill the demons, and his brother is the one he wants to kill. He asked his brother to take out his weapon. The brother asked him what he meant. Li Ran suddenly pulled out a long sword. Then he slashed at his brother. This sword not only cut off his brother's life, it also severed the hundreds of years of brotherly love between the two. The younger brother fell into a pool of blood with a lot of hatred, and the brother went on to find his lover's reincarnation. Hundreds of years passed, although the younger brother did not die because of his brother's mercy, but the scar on his stomach made him hate his brother. In order to take revenge on his brother, he cooperated with a mysterious person. He revived the Drake dragon that was killed by his brother. He wanted to bring her back to her brother's lover, and because he sensed Ji Ya's presence, he began to absorb human essence. Soon after, it grew into human form. Sensing the presence of the Drake dragon, Du Yi Po rushed to tell Li Ran. For the sake of Ji Ya's safety, Li Ran went to Ji Yu's house in the middle of the night, and went under her blanket to protect her. And the next day, he went to work at Ji Yu's company. He was going to protect her 24 hours a day, but he didn't realize that the mysterious man who supported Drake Dragon was the president of Ji Yu. That night, Ji Yu was invited by the president to his home for dinner. In the middle of the meal, she wanted to go to the restroom, but when she entered the room, she sensed Ji Yu's presence. Drake Dragon kept banging on the door with a dry body inside. As if by magic, Ji Yu was summoned there, but just as she was about to open the door, suddenly her phone rang. Li Ran asked if she wanted to pick her up later, but Ji Yu laughed and told him that her co-workers would take her home later. She told him to wait for her at home. Just as Ji Yu hung up the phone, suddenly the president of the company appeared behind her. He told her that the second floor was his private place and that she wasn't allowed to enter. Ji Yu apologized. Then she hurried downstairs. At that moment, the door to Drake Dragon's room was opened. A dark eye suddenly appeared. After returning home, Ji Yu received a strange delivery at his door. It contained a pair of glasses and a note. The note told her to wear the glasses and look in the mirror. On the other hand, Li Ran, who was out buying gifts for Ji Yu, suddenly received a phone call. Li Lang told him that she had sent a gift to Ji Yu. Soon Ji Yu will know the reason for his death in his past life. Li Ran didn't care about the gift. He ran straight to his home. At that moment, Ji Yu was already in front of the mirror, putting on her glasses. At first, she didn't notice anything strange, but just as she was about to take them off, but when she tried to take them off, she suddenly stopped moving. She pushed the glasses back on. Then she suddenly changed into her past life's appearance. The image of Li Ran killing her past life appeared in front of her. When Li Ran arrived home, Ji Yu had taken off his glasses and was staring blankly. He went up to ask Ji Yu what he saw, but with tears in her eyes, she asked Li Ran why she killed herself in her past life. But in this life, he pretends to be in love with her. She thought Li Ran was a liar. Li Ran wanted to explain, but she remembered that Shidao and the fortune teller had told her, as long as they were together, one of them would die because of the other. So he pretended to be cold-blooded and tried to break off his relationship with Ji Yu. After dropping a few harsh words, Li Ran turned around and left. On the other hand, Li Lang went to the president's house after learning about the formation of Drake Dragon. He wanted to see him, but the president, who used to obey him, tried to find a reason to refuse. When Li Lang saw that the other party dared to disobey him, he went straight to the president and grabbed him. The president suddenly had an evil smile on his face. A Drake Dragon suddenly appeared behind him. He was good at reading people's mind, and he knew that Li Lang's heart was broken. Then he revealed the scars of Li Lang's past. Li Lang warned him not to think ill of him. He told him to do as he was told. But then Drake Dragon realized that Li Lang wanted him to kill Ji Yu. That day, a woman in a green hat came to Li Lang's house to sell drinks. Li Lang tried to close the door, but the woman suddenly barred the door. She took him by the hand and wanted him to taste it. Li Lang got angry and told her to get lost. But then the lady suddenly asked him what he was most afraid of. Li Lang was puzzled. He closed the door behind him. At that moment, he didn't recognize the woman in front of him as the dark god who could manipulate people's dreams. When he got back to the house, Li Lang wanted to have a drink to relieve his boredom. Suddenly there was a strange singing sound coming from his house. It sounded like it was coming from the closet in his room, so he went over to the closet. After opening the door, he suddenly traveled to the village where he and his mother lived thousands of years ago. Suddenly, a wooden stick came from behind him. The villagers beat him severely with the stick. He waved his hand. Suddenly the villagers disappeared. He went into the house and looked at his mother, who was shivering in the corner. He asked her if she had watched him being beaten that day. Just like today, she told him that he shouldn't have been born in this world. She had done everything she could to get rid of him, but in the end, he survived. She accused Li Lang of being a monster born of her and his demon father. He deserved to die just like his father. Li Lang clenched his fists and shook off his mother's hand. Then he touched his head. With a red stain of blood, he was suddenly in a place again. This is the evil forest where his mother abandoned him. At that time, He was attacked by evil spirits. He thought he was going to die soon, but then a flying sword came out of nowhere. Li Ran saved him. This is one of Li Lang's most frightening memories. Then an evil spirit jumped at him. Li Lang couldn't dodge and fell to the ground. The ghost bit him hard on his calf. The blood coming out of his leg attracted all the ghosts to him. Li Lang knew that his brother would not come to save him this time, so he fought back and fought with the ghosts. On the other side, the god of darkness suddenly found Ji Yu and asked her the same question as Li Lang. Ji Yu was confused when she heard it. A strange melody appeared in her mind. When she reacted, she wanted to go after the lady and ask her if she knew something, but as soon as she pushed open the door, she suddenly ran into a car. She was locked in her seat by the seatbelt. She was surprised to find her parents sitting in front of her, and on the armrest was the birthday present they gave her 20 years ago. On the other side, Li Lang, who was running away from an evil spirit, suddenly realized that the god of darkness had appeared in his dream. He asked him what he wanted, but the dark god told him to hold on, because his dream world is connected to reality. If he got hurt or died in his dream, it would be linked to his physical body. She will soon tell Li Ran that both he and Ji Yu are trapped in the dream. Let's see if he'll choose to abandon him again because of Ji Yu. At that moment, the evil spirits attacked again. Li Lang saw this and ran for his life, and Ji Yu called out to his parents from the car, but they didn't respond. Then the dark god found Li Ran. She asked him to choose between saving his brother or his lover. Li Ran grabbed her by the neck in anger and asked if Drakedragon had sent her to do this, but the dark god only told him, if you don't want them to die in the dream, go in and save them. Then he turned around and left. Li Ran slowly walked forward. Then she slowly unlocked a door. On the other hand, when Ji Yu and his parents were passing through the Fox Ridge Road, the street light suddenly went dark. A mist suddenly rose in front of the car. Then a black shadow appeared. The car was hit and overturned. When Ji Yu woke up again, her mom and dad were lying in front of her. At that moment, some passers-by passed by. She screamed for them to save her, but as the passerby leaned over and poked his head in, Ji Yu suddenly realized that these two people looked exactly like her mom and dad. She opened her eyes and realized her mom and dad were at home. Was it all a dream? But why was her birthday present broken, and there was blood on her sleeve? Looking at her parents' strange behavior, she was puzzled to find out if her mom was human or not, so she told her she was hungry for pecan cookies. Her mom searched the cupboards for pecan cookies, but Ji Yu grabbed a pair of scissors and hid them behind her back. She said she didn't have any pecan cookies at home. Mom tried to explain that she was too tired and had forgotten, but Ji Yu pulled out the scissors and stabbed her directly. Facing Ji Yu's skepticism, her mother was so fierce that she grabbed her by the neck. Ji Yu kicked her in the face. Then she ran upstairs. She locked the door. Then she dragged a table to block the door. Then her father's voice came from outside. Then the lock was broken. A paw came in. Ji Yu was so scared. She didn't know what to do. But then there was a scream from outside the door. She ran to the corner of the room. She covered her eyes with her palms. Just when she thought the demon outside would rush in and eat her, suddenly, there was no movement outside. She slowly moved her hand to find a man with a red umbrella standing in front of her. The man was Li Ran, who was looking for his reincarnated lover. Although he woke Ji Yu up from the car accident and let her live, but Ji Yu's parents disappeared from the scene of the accident. This incident has always been Ji Yu's most terrifying memory. So after she came under the spell of the dark god, her body traveled back to the car that crashed back then, and now she's less than 2 kilometers away from the road where the accident happened. She desperately called out for her father, but he didn't respond at all, so she could only watch the accident happen in front of her again. Soon Drakedragon and Darkseid arrived at the scene of the accident. The Dark Lord was surprised that Li Ran chose to save her brother instead of Ji Yu, but Drakedragon told her that Li Ran was smarter than he thought. He knew he wouldn't be able to kill Ji Yu directly. That's why he dared to go to the evil ghost forest to save Li Lang first. When Ji Yu woke up again, she found her mom had strangely reappeared in front of her again. Ji Yu thought she had fallen into the same trap as before, so she tried the same trick on her mom again, but this time, her mom seemed to know everything about her as if she were real. At that moment, Ji Yu really believed she had met her mom. During dinner, Mom and Dad told her about her childhood. The three of them talked happily, and Ji Yu's mind began to forget about the real world. It was as if this was where she lived. On the other side, Li Ran saved Li Lang from the evil spirits, but Li Lang was bitten by the evil ghost. The toxin has already started to spread. He knew that if he didn't save Li Lang will probably never wake up. The two of them searched for a way out of the forest, but the exit didn't appear until they reached the edge of the cliff. Li Ran asked Li Lang what her greatest fear was. Li Lang said he was most afraid of being abandoned. Li Ran grabbed his brother by the collar and told him that he had never abandoned him. He told Li Lang to overcome his fear and look straight ahead. Then the exit suddenly appeared in the mist. The evil spirits are coming after him. The two of them backed up and tried to sprint and jump over it, but after a short distance, Li Ran suddenly stopped. Li Lang jumped down and was hanging on the edge of the cliff. He turned his head to look at Li Ran. Li Ran smiled and told him to live. Then he rushed forward to stop the demon alone. While Li Lang was trying to climb up the cliff, an evil spirit that looked just like his mother suddenly jumped forward and grabbed him. He tried to drag Li Lang down with him. Li Ran yelled yelled at him not to look. It wasn't his mother, but Li Lang couldn't stop looking back. Just when he could not hold on any longer, Li Ran suddenly jumped down. Then he grabbed the evil spirit and carried her straight down the cliff. Li Lang suddenly woke up from his bed. He shouted to save Li Ran, but because of his injuries, he fainted before he could take a few steps. Ji Yo, who had been in a dream world, suddenly started to have an abnormal heart rate in the real world. The colleagues who took her to the hospital wanted to call a doctor, but when they came back, they realized that Ji Yo had disappeared from the hospital bed. Li Ran's housekeeper carried her to Li Ran's house. He then tied them together with a concentric rope. At that moment, in her dream state, Ji Yo heard the phone ringing in her room. She ran back to her room and answered it with a surprised look on her face. Li Ran's voice came on the other end of the line. At that moment, although she had forgotten Li Ran's name, but she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Li Ran told her to come to her senses. He'll be waiting for her. After hanging up the phone, looking at the disconnected phone line on the table, Ji Yo felt it was all so unreal. So she went to the table. She picked up a pen and stuck it in her hand. At that moment, Li Ran's face appeared in her mind. Images of the two of them together kept flashing. Ji Yo finally woke up at Li Ran's call. The Dark Lord was furious and cursed, but Drakedragon doesn't give a damn, because Ji Yo and Li Lang were just bait. Now Li Ran, trapped in the dream world, is his target. Li Ran was seriously injured and could not hold out any longer and fell to the ground. The Dark Lord found Li Ran dying. She gloated and told him that the Drakedragon would soon take over his body. But just as she was about to leave, Li Ran suddenly grabbed her. Then he asked her breathlessly if Ji Yo had gone back. The Dark God didn't want to tell him, but Li Ran fell on her knees. She kept begging her to tell him. The God of Darkness mocked him and told him that Ji Yo had gone out, and told him to wait for his death inside. But then Li Ran suddenly laughed. The Dark God suddenly realized that she had been tricked. She wanted to get up and run away. Li Ran suddenly stabbed at her. The nightmare monster finally died in her own dream world. The next day, when Ji Yo was crossing the street, suddenly a man with a red umbrella appeared in front of her. Li Ran wanted to go up to him, but Ji Yo suddenly shook his head and told him not to come any closer. Then she ran forward and jumped into Li Ran's arms. On this day, a strange dried body was dug up at a construction site. According to the dryness of the body, the police concluded that the body had been buried for at least 100 years. But Ji Yo found a manicure on the corpse's hands, and the nail art looked very familiar to her. So she took out her cell phone and snapped a picture. Then she rushed back to the office. She opened the drawer and took out the nail she found. The result was just as she expected. The nail on the corpse's hand was exactly the same as the one she found in the living room when she went to the president's house for dinner a few days ago. She went to the office and asked the president what he had to do with the corpse, but to her surprise, the president just smiled and admitted that he did it himself. He slowly turned his head. She found the word "skew" printed on his forehead. It turns out that the president is the mysterious person Shadao told her about. Ji Yo asked him where he took his parents. At that moment, the president put a folded red flower on the table. Ji Yo's heart was tightened when he saw it. It was the same carnation she had folded for her mom when she was a child. The president asked her to look at the back of the flower. Ji Yo turned it upside down and realized that it was the message her parents had written to her to ask for help. He told her that if she gave him Li Ran's body, he would return her parents to her. Then he put a bottle of poison in Ji Yo's hand. If he drank one drop, he would never wake up. When he got home, he saw the letter from his parents and the drug given to him by the president. Ji Yo's heart was struggling. Then Li Ran called her, because Ji Yo hadn't answered her text messages for a day. Li Ran guessed that she must have something on her mind, so he bought her a gift. After opening the box, Ji Yo found her favorite sneakers. Looking at Li Ran, who was doting on her, in the end, she gave up the chance to rescue her parents. She told Li Ran what happened today, and handed over the poison to him. And Li Ran found Du Yi Po after learning this news. He wanted her to help him save Ji Yo's parents. Du Yi Po agreed, but on one condition, that Li Ran would leave Ji Yo, because she already knows that Ji Yo is Li Ran's destiny. If Li Ran continues to haunt her, Li Ran will surely end up in the same fate. But Li Ran told her, the only reason he's still alive is to see Ji Yo. Then he wanted to get up and leave. Then Du Yi Po told him where Ji Yo's parents were being held. Li Ran gave Du Yi Po a big kiss. Then he rushed out, because he knew that Li Lang had a close relationship with the president. So Li Ran went to find Li Lang and asked for his help. But Li Lang was also threatened by the president. He didn't care about his brother's kindness in saving his life in the evil ghost forest. He secretly spiked the coffee with drugs. At that moment, the president was watching the two of them with a surveillance camera. When Li Ran tried to drink the coffee, his conscience was clear, but he stopped her. But when he heard that his brother was looking for him because of that woman again, he was so angry that he let him drink the coffee. Then a flower pot fell on him. Li Ran was knocked to the ground. When Li Lang sought revenge on Drakedragon and the president threatened him with a contract from the past. It turns out that the president met Li Lang dying on the side of the road. Seeing how pitiful he was, He took out a strange fruit and placed it in front of him. Soon the fruit turned into a cloud of black gas, and the fox demon inhaled it. The dying Li Lang instantly came back to life. Li Lang asked him why he saved him, but the president told him that the reason was not important. He just wanted him to remember him. Don't forget when you need him to return the favor. Li Lang agreed. The next moment, a pair of contract rings appeared on each of their hands, because the nine-tailed fox would be punished if he didn't pay his debt, so the president threatened Li Lang to hand over Li Ran to him within 2 days. Otherwise, he'll activate the contract and destroy his soul. Li Lang had no choice but to disguise himself as Li Ran. Then he went to the Netherworld Bureau and asked Du Yipo if there was any way to break the contract, but Du Yipo recognized him right away. Li Lang had no choice but to reveal himself. He told Du Yipo about the debt he owed 100 years ago, but Du Yipo didn't show any favor to him. He told him that the only way to break the contract was to die. Li Lang could only leave in frustration, but as soon as he left the house, Du Yipo's husband, Xuan Yi Wang, suddenly pulled him aside. He told him not to think about how to break the contract, but to find a way to unlock all the nodes. Xuan Yi Wang turned around and went back to the house, and Li Lang seemed to understand something. So that night, he went to the chairman of the board and accepted his request, and got a bottle of ecstasy from him. He secretly put it in the coffee he gave to Li Ran. The chairman saw Li Lang's success on the surveillance camera. He rushed over there right away. He called Dragon, who was working at the TV station, and was close to Jiyo. He told him to come and take over Li Ran's body. But just as Dragon was about to go back, Jiyo suddenly called out to him from behind. She told him that today is his welcome party. It's rude for him to leave like this. Kai Long wanted to find a reason to leave, but Jiyo kept inviting him. He finally accepted, and the chairman saw that Dragon was slow to return. He wanted to cut out Li Ran's heart first, but Li Lang suddenly attacked and sent him flying. The chairman was surprised that Li Lang broke the contract and attacked him, but then Li Lang suddenly revealed his true form. The chairman looked at Li Ran on the ground. He realized that the two of them had just swapped their bodies by using the magic of transformation. It turned out that the two brothers had set up a trap for him. From the night they got the drug, Li Ran and Li Lang swapped identities. The chairman was furious and drew his knife to attack Li Ran, but Li Ran grabbed the knife and stabbed himself. He wanted to activate the contract to make Li Lang kill Li Ran, but before he could finish his sentence, Li Ran grabbed him by the neck. He asked the chairman to choose whether to be strangled by himself now or to change the contract so that he could live. At that moment, the contract ring on Li Lang's body lit up. He stepped forward and took away Li Ran's arm. The contract was completely broken. The severely injured chairman wanted to get the lantern fruit to save his life. The two of them went straight to the lantern grass. Soon after, Jiyo, who was still struggling with Dragon, received a text message from Li Ran. Because he knew Dragon couldn't kill him, so Jiyo changed his face and mocked the dragon. Then she jumped into the arms of Li Ran, who came to pick her up. When he got home, he saw his parents who had disappeared for more than 20 years standing in front of him. Jiyo couldn't hide his excitement any longer and jumped into his parents' arms. On the other hand, Dragon was furious when he realized that his plan had failed. He was furious and decided to take the ultimate revenge on Li Ran. Pedestrians on the road suddenly fell to the ground without warning. Anyone who came into contact with Kai Lung was killed. Soon the whole city was littered with corpses. The biggest plague in history is spreading rapidly. Du Yipo knew that this was the revenge of the Dragons to prevent more innocent people from dying, so she altered Jiyu's Book of Life and Death. She wanted to end her life early. As she was crossing the street, suddenly, an out-of-control truck came crashing down on her. Du Yipo held her head in anger. The truck was stopped by her husband, Xuan Yi Wang. Li Ran, who had gotten the news, found Du Yipo, but before he could open his mouth, Du Yipo told him that Jiyo must die. Li Ran fell to his knees. He begged Du Yipo to give him 3 more days. He would find a way to destroy the dragon. If he can't, I will die with the dragon with my own life. Du Yipo agreed. Li Ran, after thinking hard all night, Li Ran went straight to Dragon's house. He said he wanted to cooperate with him, as long as Dragon gave up Jiyu's body and bring back the other half of his soul buried in Jiyu's body. I'll help him subdue Du Yipo, so that he could take over his body and become the master of the River of Forgetfulness. Although Dragon didn't believe in Li Ran's words, but he was very interested in Li Ran's idea, so he agreed to it. On Li Ran's side, he had already discussed it with Du Yipo, because if Dragon fell into the river, his spirit would be destroyed, so he wanted to lure the dragon to her. He swallowed his scales and let the dragon get on top of him. Then, Du Yipo will use his petrification spell to petrify him. Then he would throw him into the River of Forgetfulness and destroy him. Even though Du Yipo told him that he might be in danger, Li Ran couldn't think of a better way. He had to take the risk for Jiyu. But Dragon secretly found Jiyo, and summoned the other half of her soul, and found out Li Ran's plan from her. After ordering Jiyu to go home and stall Li Ran, he went straight to the Netherworld Bureau and found Du Yipo. And Du Yipo was shocked to see Dragons in human form, because Dragon's manifestation was exactly the same as her dead son. Dragon was irritating Du Yipo with her son's identity. Enraged, Du Yipo raised her hand to cast a spell. She suddenly pulled out a small mirror. A golden light suddenly flooded the room. By the time Li Ran arrived, Du Yipo had already been turned into a stone statue. It turns out that Dragon had predicted that Li Ran would take this step, so he sneaked into the village and attacked Shu Dao. who was unprepared. He snatched his moon realm, which can reflect all spells. Enraged, Li Ran immediately attacked Drakedragon, but Ji Yu was corrupted by the dragon's spirit. Every time Li Ran tried to use his sword, she would always try to stop him. It wasn't long before Li Ran was knocked to the ground. Drakedragon told him that Ji Yu's body was now completely taken over by him. If he doesn't give up his body, Ji Yu's soul will die soon. Looking at the rapidly growing scales on Ji Yu's body and her agonized expression, Li Ran's heart was like a knife. He could only take out the Drakedragon's scales and tried to compromise. Just when Li Ran was about to put the scale into her mouth, when she regained consciousness, Ji Yu suddenly put a gun to her head. Li Ran immediately stepped forward to stop Ji Yu. In order to save her lover, Li Ran swallowed the Drakedragon's scale. She absorbed all the Drakedragon's marks into her body. Soon the divine consciousness of the Drakedragon took over Li Ran's body. Ji Yu hugged Li Ran and cried. When Li Lang got the news, he rushed into the house, seeing that his brother had been attacked by the dragon. Angry, he immediately went to fight against the dragon, but within a few moments, the dragon knocked him to the ground. Then he stabbed him. While Drakedragon was feeling proud of himself, suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his heart. Li Ran knew he was doomed before he arrived. He swallowed the nine-tailed fox's most feared flower, the Tsukimi flower, because he was completely tied to Drakedragon, so he planned to use the worst outcome to die with Drakedragon. He called his brother Li Lang to him, then he threw out his sword. Li Lang stabbed him and Kai Long in the heart. Then he opened the door to the river. Li Lang's face was covered in tears. Looking at his brother in front of him, his heart was filled with sadness. Finally, he stabbed the heart. Ji Yu cried and tried to rush forward to save Li Ran, but Li Ran only left a message of, "I love you." After saying that, Li Ran and Drakedragon fell into the river of forgetfulness. All was finally at peace again. The plague that had killed so many people disappeared overnight. The petrified Du Yi Po was restored to normal. Ji Yu cried and fell on his knees in front of the Netherworld authority. He wanted Du Yi Po to help him save Li Ran. On the surface, Du Yi Po didn't see him, but behind his back, he kept asking for help from the gods, so it wasn't long before the fortune teller from the village suddenly appeared. The master's real identity is one of the 10 kings of the underworld, the king of the 5 wheel of fortune. He told Ji Yu and Li Lang that he had been commissioned by someone. Li Ran's fox pearl can bring him back to life, but because they can't break their own rules, so they need one of them to exchange his remaining life for Li Ran. Ji Yu was about to agree, but then Li Lang suddenly got up and stopped her. He didn't want the person his brother saved with his life to make the same mistake again, so he took out his own life. He turned into a ray of golden light and disappeared into thin air. The reincarnation king didn't tell Ji Yu how long it would take for Li Ran to return, so Ji Yu could only squat by the sea every day and talk about. Half a year passed in a flash. That day, Li Lang's favorite flower suddenly appeared on his agenda, and Ji Yu was crossing the street after work when she suddenly saw a familiar figure. She immediately jumped forward. Then she jumped into Li Ran's arms. A few years passed. They got married in Fox Hill and gave birth to a lovely son, and this son is the reincarnation of his brother, Li Lang.